Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to replace the front brakes in a 2008 Honda Civic. It's pretty standard. It's fairly similar to any modern brake pad system or brake system in modern cars, probably from the late 90s, mid 90s to now. Honda doesn't really have anything special other than that they use a screw or a bolt to hold the rotor to the hub. That can be a little bit of a challenge to work around, but other than that, it's fairly standard. This is a job I would consider, something suitable for a new mechanic, even though it is the brake system. People get a little bit leery about working on brakes, but it's not really that hard of a job. It's fairly straightforward. Probably takes less than an hour if you're used to doing it on a fairly regular basis. Now, I'm replacing the rotors on my car because I just don't think that even if I was to resurface them, they'd go another 130,000 miles. Maybe they would, but it doesn't really matter to me. They're like $30 for a decent set of rotors, $30 a piece for a decent replacement rotor. So I just go ahead and just get the replacements and just do all of it at the same time. Now I like Civic brake components like rotors and pads. They're a generic version of the StopTech. They are made by the same company. The StopTech is Civic. And so I like to get those. I have some links to the part numbers that you can purchase on Amazon if you like. You can also find them at Rock Auto fairly inexpensively. They might be a little cheaper at Rock Auto, even with the shipping. Other brands that I know friends of mine trust would be like AC Delco, Beck Arnley, actual StopTech instead of Civic. But there's a few others. You gotta choose whichever ones you are comfortable with. I prefer ceramic pads versus organics or semi-metallics. They tend to last a little longer. They're a little cleaner, a little quieter. I definitely would not get organics. They're just really dirty, and I don't think they last very long. You could resurface your rotors if you wanted. It's maybe 10 or 12 bucks, but like I said, it's just, I don't think they're going to last that long. So without further ado, here we are on to show you how to change out the pads and rotors. So my video file got corrupted, so I have to reshoot a couple scenes here. That's why you'll see a little discontinuity in the video. So first you start off by removing the whole caliper. And what you do is you can take a 17mm wrench. So this is a double-sided 17 and 19. There's two bolts. There's a bolt here, then one on the bottom that you need to remove. So we'll do that by putting a wrench here, and then I like to use a mallet, and I'll tap this over to loosen it, just because I have a hard time getting enough leverage just pulling on it by myself. Now just make sure you go in the correct direction. This is the passenger side, so you'll be hitting it this way at the top, and then down at the bottom you'd be tapping it over this way. Once you get these bolts off, you just pull the caliper off. Now, it might be hard to get the caliper off just by hand. This one's loose because it's a new rotor, new caliper, like I said. But you can pry up under here to help pop it off. Some people also might pry through here to try to pry the brake pads a little bit off the rotor, especially if there's a lip. An old rotor might get a little lip right here that makes it difficult. But anyways, force it off, wiggle it off, eventually get it off. You can move it up out of the way. I typically might tuck it back here. Now is also a good time to pop the brake pads out, maybe right before you stick it in. It's not necessarily the easiest time, but you can push the brake pad out and pull it out here. Same thing on the backside one. Again, because my video file got corrupted, that's all new pads and rotors, so I'm not going to pop those out right now. But that'll make it easier to get put it back on, which we'll do a little later step. We're going to put the caliper whole assembly back on, and then just take the caliper part off, leaving the bracket part on. So now that the caliper's off, you have to get the rotor off. Now on most Hondas, they'll have a single screw holding the rotor onto the hub. This car has two. You can see one's missing. So what I ended up doing with mine is I used an impact similar to this, to get it off, and with the number 2 Phillips head. And that worked, and it was coming off again there. I don't want to do too much, so I'm just going to put it back on. The second one did not come out. I ended up drilling that one out, and I didn't replace it. Now that's up to you if you want to replace it or not. You may end up having to drill out both of them, And you don't have to replace these. My experience with Hondas is I don't replace them when I drill them out. I usually leave them. Most car manufacturers don't use these. I believe it's for just an assembly aid. So they put these things in to hold the rotor to the hub, you know, before they put a bunch of stuff together. Now, as far as drilling it goes, a 1/4 inch drill works. You can actually see that this one still has it on, even though it was a few days ago that I drilled it out. So the 1/4 inch is large enough. It'll pop the head off. The rotor will come off. You might have to bang it off. That's not uncommon. You might just hit it with a mallet or a hammer a few times just to break up some rust, and then try to tap it off from the back side. Now, the next step is to put the caliper back on. So, got the caliper on. I swear that the hardest part is actually lining up the bolts on the back side here. One trick, you know, is you get it started here first. I don't know how well you can see that. And then try to see the hole in the caliper side. Get this bolt started loosely, and then get the bolt on the bottom started, and then go ahead and tighten them both up. And then getting them tight, you know, with the ratchet, I usually like to go in with put the wrench back on and just give them one little quick hit with the hammer just to kind of torque it down just a touch. You're not trying to kill these bolts here. They're not supposed to be torqued like a huge amount. You just want them tight so that you know, the caliper doesn't get loose. Now you're going to take the slide pin bolts out. These are 12 millimeters too, one on the top, one on the bottom over here. They shouldn't be on too hard, so you just take a ratcheting wrench, should be able to get them off fairly easily. Just a trick, you know, you just kind of hit it with your hand, kind of a thing. Should be enough to loosen them up. Alright, so the caliper is off. You can actually see this is the caliper piston right here. We're going to have to push that back before we put the new pads in. Now there's these metal bracket things right here. You're just going to pull them off. If you have troubles, you can use pliers or something like that. But there's new ones that come with the kit, at least with the Centrics. Now these slide pins, we're going to pull them out and grease them. Now I screwed up. Alright. Whew, that one came out really hard. Wipe the grease off with the paper towel and then put new brake grease on. The boot's going to stay here, and you're going to just shove them back in, and then you shove them in hard enough and the boot will reseat itself up on the end here. I forgot brake grease when I went up to my in-laws here to do this job, and apparently they don't have any, so I'm going to have to do this when I get home. But don't neglect this. These pins will get frozen in here and the caliper will seize. So it's easy to do. All you do is just take grease and slather it on it. You know, just take a paper towel, wipe the old stuff off, slather the new stuff on, stick it in. Get high temperature brake grease for doing that. Alright, so the new one goes on like so. You just push it on. If you have any problems, just line it up. Don't let it hit the rotor here. So you'll just have to, I'll just push this off and just adjust it over a little bit. And it should be pretty well seated. And you just do that on for the top and the bottom here. Okay, the caliper piston needs to get pushed back in. You can use a C-clamp for that. This is probably the smallest C-clamp I've ever used to push in a caliper. It just happened to be laying around. I forgot to bring mine up. So you just tighten this thing up. It'll push this piston back in. You're going to leave the hood of your car up. You're going to run over and check the brake master cylinder level here. You can see my levels here. So this will start filling up as I push the caliper back in. Now if you go to a dealership and they're constantly topping this off, what's going to happen is you're going to push this and it's going to spill out over the top and it's going to make a mess. It's not good to get brake fluid on stuff in the car, like it eats paint, so you won't like that. What you want to do is you'll just open this brake master cylinder capo reservoir off, and as it fills up you'll have to section some out with a syringe or something like that. And then, but you don't want to leave this open all the time, because brake fluid is what's called hydrophilic. It means it loves water. It'll absorb water out of the atmosphere. Not good, because it'll reduce the boiling temperature of your fluid. So once you're done, tighten this thing back up. But going back over to here, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press this, just turn this, and this caliper piston will go get back into the caliper there. Now I've never had this happen before, but have this rubber portion is splooging out here. That's not good because you don't want it to pinch into in between the piston and the brake pad. So I'm going to try to fold it back in gently. I don't want to tear it, but I don't want it to stick out like this because that's definitely not good. So it's like there's a little bit of air pocket like stuck back here. What I ended up doing with the screwdriver is kind of lifting it from the piston a little bit and being able to push the air out. Got it folded back in. So now what we're going to do, now that that's done, we're just going to place the pads right in there. Alright, so the front pad doesn't have a little thing sticking on it, and you should just be able to slip it in just like so. So you make sure that it goes in here, into here, and then the back one has this little stubby thing. Now, so you're just going to go in kind of much the same. Boom, that's it, they're there. Now the caliper, we don't want to twist the brake line, so I'm making sure to, when I put it back on, it's the same way it came off. And it's hard to do one-handed, but whew, push that in. You're gonna have to push these slide pins in a little bit. Boom. That's pretty much it. Now we're gonna replace the slide pin bolts. I'm gonna put a little anti-seize on them. All right, so yep, so I torqued these things back down. Just tight, but not like killing it. Just using this style ratchet. Just I'm not sure what foot-pounds it is, probably from 30 or 40 or something like that. I'll have to double check and put them in the description. Now all you have to really do is the other side. You should be good. Spray this down with some brake cleaner just to get rid of some residual oil. That might be on the caliper and the rotors. Alright, definitely take this thing out for a little test drive after you get it going, especially if you're going to pass it off to a significant other. And I think they'll appreciate it. You will notice when you first get into the car that the brake pads are going to have to get pressed down onto the rotor again, so you'll have a lot of play. So go in and pump your brake pedal before you start driving. Alright, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. If you have any constructive criticism, you can also leave that in the comment section as well. And I think that's about it. Again, I do have some links down below for some of the parts and such that you can check out for your convenience. And thanks again. If you are into any like camera stuff or anything like that, I have videos about photography you might find interesting, some Milky Way photography stuff. Please check that out if catches your fancy. Thank you very much.